After crossing the territory of Laos, the waters of the Mekong enter a territory plagued by violence and poverty. The scene of political convulsions, the atrocities of war and terrible genocide, very little now remains of the powerful empire of Cambodia, which for 5 centuries remained invincible, ruling over a considerable area of Southeast Asia. In the jungles of the north of the country lies hidden the most incredible legacy of the once supreme Khmer Empire. This is Angkor, the city of the sleeping forest, one of the most incredible architectural monuments on earth. However, the origin of Angkor remains veiled in mystery. The texts of the Khmer Empire, which were written on palm leaves and skins, have not survived the harsh conditions of the jungle. The only references we have come from the accounts of Chinese and Indian travelers and the few surviving stone inscriptions. These inscriptions contain constant references to the worship of water. The demographic pressure in Angkor forced them to harvest 4 crops of rice a year. A Cambodian proverb says that rice is the heart of war. The engineers of the empire designed an enormous complex system of canals, dikes and reservoirs to compensate for the climatic differences and so multiply the crops, creating an economic potential which for 5 centuries allowed 1 million inhabitants to live and progress. The miracle was that this rational organization of space around the monuments was in perfect harmony with the beliefs, the religious symbolism, and the political power. Founded at the start of the 9th century by King Jayavarman II, Angkor was the capital of Cambodia until the 15th century. In 1431, it was sacked by Thai invaders, and for over 400 years, the city remained forgotten, lost in the depths of time. In 1858, the Frenchman Henri Mouhot revealed it to the Western world, and 2 years later, with the French colonization of Indochina, a series of archaeologists began to study and rebuild the city, defying nature and attempting to recover the work of the ancient kings and builders. But with the difficult political and social situation of Cambodia, they were doomed to failure, and once more Angkor was left to be devoured by the jungle. The entrances to the site are guarded by the genies of the heavens, 27 stone giants standing at either side of the road leading to Angkor Wat, the culmination of Khmer art. Balance, harmony, a sense of rhythm, of proportion and perspective. Henri Mouhot, in his account of his travels through the kingdoms of Siam, Cambodia and Laos, describes it thus.
Beyond a wide space cleared of all vegetation stretches an immense colonnade, crowned by 5 towers in the shape of lotus flowers. Against the deep blue of the sky and the intense green of the jungle, which serve as the backdrop to this solitude, the line of an architecture which is both elegant and majestic seemed to me the monumental profile of an enormous cemetery, the final resting place of an entire extinct race.
The beauty and femininity of the apsaras, the celestial nymphs and dancers of the universe, accompany the visitor as he walks around Angkor Wat. But the recent history of Cambodia is very different from the splendor of its past. In 1975, Salot Sa, better known as Pol Pot, plunged his country into the most profound hell. While neighboring Vietnam was fighting a bloody struggle against the American invader, Pol Pot founded the clandestine Kampuchea Workers' Party, a movement first planned in the 1950s in the classrooms of the Sorbonne University in Paris, where Pol Pot had been given a grant to study. In 1965, on a visit to China at the start of the Cultural Revolution, Pol Pot discovered radical politics. A peasant revolt marked the beginning of a declaration of armed struggle, but Pol Pot and his army of Khmer Rouges did not develop their vision of a revolutionary society until they had succeeded in gaining absolute power. Events speeded up as the war against the Americans in Vietnam escalated. The coup d'etat by General Lon Nol and the proclamation of the Khmer Republic unleashed civil war. 5 years later, in April 1975, the Khmer Rouges succeeded in conquering the capital, Phnom Penh. The population, weary of war, welcomed the visitors as heroes bringing peace. But what they could never have imagined was that that very same day a nightmare had begun and would continue for 4 long years. The worst was yet to come. Immediately, massive evacuation from the capital began, and the population was interned in communes, made to do forced labor. All basic rights were abolished, and the most absolute reign of terror began. In a matter of hours, Phnom Penh became a ghost town, and all forms of property were abolished. The markets, the currency, the media, telephones, and the postal service all disappeared. Pol Pot, Big Brother #1, was finally able to put into practice what he had dreamt of for so long. The intellectuals must learn from the young, illiterate peasants. Anyone who had received secondary education was condemned to be executed. Wearing glasses and not having calluses on your hands made you a candidate for death. 90% of doctors were killed. Babies were murdered by throwing them against trees, and using hose in order to save ammunition, thousands of Cambodians were wiped out. The fields of Cambodia were soon strewn with dead bodies in a Holocaust comparable to that of Hitler or Stalin, and which cost the lives of 2 million people, that is, a third of the population. Tol Kork, a suburb of Phnom Penh, was the place chosen to bury over 20,000 victims. Today, we can still see the mass graves of the most horrific, blood-curdling place in Southeast Asia. In the center of Tol Kork, a monument reminds us just what humans are capable of. And the most horrifying thing of all is that the assassins were boys and girls of between 10 and 15 years old who were turned into killing machines through sessions of political indoctrination. When just 11 years old.
Pol Pot was not the cause of the genocide, quite the opposite. He managed to raise the production of rice, and there was food for everyone. If they had let him govern for longer, this country would have developed. Those really responsible for the Holocaust were the Vietnamese, who hate us. They infiltrated our organizations and manipulated the ignorant local leaders in order to wipe out our culture.
The democratic regime of Kampuchea converted a Tual Suavi Catholic school into the main detention and interrogation center of the political police. Known as S-21, it remains the greatest symbol of Pol Pot's reign of terror. Its archives provide chilling, detailed accounts of the prisoners who passed through here. Interrogations were carried out by young fanatics eager to prove themselves. If the victim confessed to some crime, he was sentenced to death. And if not, the interrogators murdered him anyway, simply with a blow to the head. In order to stop the torture, prisoners had to declare themselves guilty of one of three basic accusations. Either they were agents of the CIA, the KGB, or the Vietnamese secret services. Daily they were subjected to such brutal punishment that many of them simply could no longer bear it and took their own lives, throwing themselves from the upper floors. To avoid these suicides, the Khmer Rouges put barbed wire around the walls of the entire building. When it came to torturing their victims, the executioners made no distinction between a frail old woman, an innocent girl, or a foreign journalist who had been unable to flee the country in time. In 4 years, over 17,000 people were executed in the S-21 concentration camp. In one of the rooms, we can still see the piles of clothes of those innocent victims exterminated by their own people. Only 2 people managed to escape from this prison alive, thanks to their artistic skills. The sculptor Im Chan was saved because he had to finish a bust of Pol Pot. Today is the first time Im Chan has returned to the concentration camp he was released from.